Getting there. Sorry about the shenanigans, guys. Always some shenanigans. Cool. All right, we're live. Last night I did a part one that I didn't realize was a part one, but I think I was kind of a little bit irritated because I had just discovered that I had a bunch of technical problems, gear that needed to be fixed and whatnot. Why does this say private? That is not correct. And I thought the shenanigans were over. Let me fix this. Public. There we go. Okay, now people can actually join us. My God, man. All right, so yeah, last night we started this topic, which I didn't mention last night, was originally I do this every year. I don't know if I mentioned this or not. I don't think I did, but every year on 11/11 because it's a important, significant kind of monumental subject, or it's not an event. Yeah, I guess it's a constituent of my experience. I always do a 11/11/11 stream, and it was storming really badly on 11/11, so I had to keep putting it off. And now we're here. First part is done. And tonight we're going to talk more about how the universal mind seems to have a sort of map or a way of informing people to ask the right questions in the right way, right? That whole thing of he who has eyes to hear and ears to hear and eyes to see. Ask and ye shall receive. A lot of people like to take that ask and ye shall receive thing as a like a promise of material gains and whatnot. And sorry, I'm distracted because I made this public, but it still says it has 0 viewers. So I refresh and make sure. Okay, well, I guess it is what it is. Yeah, but I think it's more talking about the questions about, potentially our past lives, our destiny. For me, my whole life has always been really obviously about fulfilling the true will, right? No question about what that true will is, and a very acute sense of or awareness of the fact that the fundamental problem in the world is that we have been disconnected from that. In fact, I posted a meme created by ChatGPT, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, where it was asked how to stop enlightenment from spreading in society. And one of the things it says is that you would minimize that sense of personal purpose in people. And so, it's been quite a source of confusion for me to look out in the world and see all of these people who kind of are content or appear to be content to let themselves be led and to allow others to make the determination as to like where they will fit in the world. And of course, that has produced a tremendous amount of dissonance. That's literally what dissonance is, trying to put square peg in a round hole. And so when you begin this process of awakening, when you increase the communication between the subconscious and the conscious mind, one of the primary things that's going to happen is that you are going to come into homeostasis with your own being, right? You're going to find the place where you fit, and you will also find that you function better there, And in order to really understand ourselves, if it's true that we're infinite beings, we are eternal souls, and very complex creatures, we actually need to know more about ourselves potentially than just this life, right? And that seems to be one of the functions of synchronicity, to help us to decode all of these things and to give us answers to some of the big questions, or at least provide some anecdotal or circumstantial evidence. Because absolute responses in regards to whether there's a God or not, these kind of things, are probably not really within the realm of possibility. And I think that one of the reasons synchronicity it presents in the way that it does is that let's assume there is a God, that God is restricted and bound by the laws of its creation. If it were to subvert, even for a second, any one of those laws, the whole creation would cease to exist. So it can't be done. So synchronicity is kind of the only way, this kind of like leaving breadcrumbs in the wiring under the board, the structural elements of our universe and experience. That's really the only way for the universe to communicate with us beyond voices in our heads. And voices in our heads, this is not entirely, it doesn't mean that you're insane. And in my experience, sometimes these voices can be, astoundingly accurate. In fact, one of the elements of what I call the Phoenix process is this voice in the head. And I have discovered over the years that some of my heroes, Jerry Garcia, Robert Anton Wilson, I knew about Robert Anton Wilson, but I didn't actually read about Garcia, having had the same experience with the voice. But not only was it teaching him the same stuff, he described it with the same adjectives that I did, and he gave the process the same name at the end of the day. So the point I'm getting at is that's a very common element of this. But if you're going to be sane and you're going to be smart, then you cannot just trust voices in your head. Synchronicities represent something. Cheers, Athena. Represent something a level beyond that, so that we can have something more like certainty than faith. And that has definitely been a tremendous service to me. Another thing I want to mention just while I'm thinking about it is that if it's true that humanity is awakening, right? One of the few guarantees that we have in this world, these hermetic principles or universal truths or however you want to talk about them, probably suits us best to just not classify them at all and just call it wisdom. But it's infallible wisdom. And one of those things is that as above, so below, as within, so without. Keter is in Malkut, Malkut is in Keter, but after another fashion. All of these ideas really are descriptive of this. But microcosm, macrocosm, if it is an experience of the individual that awakens their consciousness so that they are less of an automaton. By the way, I figured out why people are sheep last night, and I'll explain that in a minute. It's really obvious. My mind is blown that I didn't think of this earlier. And I'm sure somewhere in the psychological literature, I'm sure this is described all over the place, and I've just somehow missed it. Anyways, though, let's finish with this first point, that if it's true that people that are awakening experience synchronicities as a symptom of this process, the collective will start to experience collective synchronicities. And there have been a few. I made this prediction a couple of years ago, actually. And there have been a few since then. I can't remember them all. And none of them are super recent that I'm aware of. I'm sure, I don't know everything. So there's probably, if you guys know of any, please put them in the chat in the comments. But the, symmetry, right, of alien intelligence emerging on this planet simultaneously with artificial intelligence is exactly what I was talking about. These kind of symmetries are guaranteed to emerge in that way, And this actually is a key to almost prophetical insight. I mean, it's not almost prophetical, it is prophetical, really. But it's like, it's not woo. You understand how you're doing it. If you see one half of some whole emerge, you will get to the point where you can predict the antinomy, how it will take shape. You will know it's already present because you've seen its, positive, the negative corollary. AI, alien intelligence, artificial intelligence. And then, this one's hilarious, but there was a penis-shaped, balls and everything, iceberg, floating up the coast of Canada. Chapel Perilous, yeah, he knows about Chapel Perilous. Well, with a name like Synchronicity, I would assume that you would know what Chapel Perilous is. Man, no one is showing up in the vertical chat. I started the stream over just to accommodate these motherfuckers, and they're not coming. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Okay, this cock and balls iceberg is floating up. Oh, my God. What was it called? Conception Bay, right? Conception Bay on its way to... the place where it's landed was like, you know, the like uterus bay or something. I mean, it was completely crazy. And this thing, you know, it's this dick floating up the ocean through Conception Bay, heading to Uterus Island or whatever the hell, you know. This is the kind of thing I mean, you know. These are those mysterious godwinks. These are expressions of the symmetry, and one of the most important things that they tell us is that whole hermetic axiom that the all is mind. You know, the Buddha said this as well. Anybody with a flickering brain cell at some point probably figures this out, you know, that there is a connection between our individual mind and the universal mind. That a good way that I like to explain this actually comes from the Pythagorean Illuminati, not the old one, but the new one. A lot of their stuff, by the way, I'm not endorsing them. The new PI, not the 2,000-year-old Pythagorean Illuminati. I fully endorse those guys. But there's a veil between worlds, is how, you know, they talk about it in the occult, different occult traditions from all over the world have some reference to this. The Western occult tradition, the veil, basically. And it's a Fourier transform, is how the Pythagorean Illuminati describe it. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And the function of this Fourier transform is to convert the ideal into the actual, you know. And that's how we end up with these coincidences, these synchronicities, like Mercury being right next to the sun and then discovering that if you knock a proton off Mercury, it becomes gold. You know, this kind of thing. Are expressions of the universal mind. These are the breadcrumbs that have been dropped for us to decode. And what I've noticed over the years is that it happens on a macro level and on a micro level. So you can apply the same sort of navigational protocol that you do to your own decoding of the information that the universe is presenting you with. You guys know Bob Dylan? What is that song? It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. He says, "The highway is for gamblers. You better use your sense and take what you have gathered from coincidence." Brilliant stuff. Leave your stepping stones behind. There's something calls for you. Forget about the dead you've left. They will not follow you. Strike another match and start anew, because it's all over now, baby blue. Other deeper meanings in the reference to the baby blue thing, but this is not the stream for that. Yeah, so, you know, we have it in micro and macro, these hints and insights and breadcrumbs leading us on, as Maynard James Keenan sang in the song 11, 1 and 1, 11, you are the voice that's been calling me back home, right? It's a wild, wild world, and we're in it. Hopefully to win it. Uh-oh, someone is entering my lair. What is this beast? Uh-oh. Looks like coca paste. I'll go ahead and lay off of that for the moment, though. Okay, so where are we going with all of this lunacy? We have discussed the macro and the micro to some extent. You know, I guess one of the things I didn't get into last night has to do with the possibility that, you know, one of the questions we all end up asking ourselves, I think, when you enter into this process, is reincarnation real? You know, and if so, who have I been in a past life? And that question, I was not even asking. I was not the least bit concerned. And those kind of details are things that I've noticed along the way that really make me question whether there isn't something that is consciously manipulating all of these circumstances, you know? I tend to think not, but some of my experiences refute that position pretty thoroughly. But here's the thing, all right? So I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because I've made entire like multi-hour videos. I have more than one live stream because one is in the vertical feed and one is in the horizontal feed. And that is so people can watch on their phones or people that have larger screens and prefer. It's just a matter of accommodating people. Chill out, bruh. Yeah, so, you know, I wasn't even asking this question. And another thing that kind of is interesting about this, generally when people come to these conclusions about their past life, it's someone they like, you know? And that's one reason to be suspicious about it. Because they, you know, it's a wish demon. Like you were hoping you were fucking Cleopatra or whatever, you know, but you were probably some jerk off like everybody else, you know, fucking janitor or something. And and so I started getting all of these indications that I did not like one little bit. I viewed this person as an absolutely vile, evil, pedophile, Illuminati, you know, monster. And it's entirely possible that that's true and fair, which still bothers me, honestly, to this day. The evidence is inconclusive for sure. But it was down to the fact that, you know, one morning my girlfriend had ordered me a book that was about this person's books. And I flip it open. And the author is from Spotsylvania County. And he describes running around in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, trying to talk these redneck kids into reading Tim Leary books. That's what I was doing in high school. I was in Spotsylvania, Virginia, running around trying to convince these rednecks to read Tim Leary. And, you know, I was like, man, that is weird. And then he, for no reason at all, mentions that he had this baseball card that was a Willie Mays and it was Willie Mays and somebody else, one of those hella old school people. But the two of them, I also had that card. And it just didn't make any sense. Like, why did he mention this, you know? And so I'm already kind of like, man, this is kind of strange. And I keep going, and I read a description of this person who these synchronicities had been bombarding me about for weeks at this point. And it said the beast, as a morning ritual, was to put on his black smoking jacket. I looked down at my black smoking jacket that I had just ordered from Macy's because my mom sent me a gift card. 2 eggs, salt. Look on my plate. I got my 2 eggs, salt, coffee, enough sugar to stand a spoon. Look over and black coffee, tons of sugar, spoon almost standing up. Perique tobacco and no other. I've got my Perique tobacco sitting by my breakfast plate. At this point, I'm almost scared to read the next line, you know. And enough heroin to kill a horse. And I'm like, shoo. I don't have any heroin, but I sure did have a big ball of Peshawar opium that I had grown in my front yard, sitting right by my coffee. And then I started to realize that, you know, all of these stories that I read from this guy, like, you know, betting a girl in his mother's bed and she dropped an earring and that got him caught at the age of 15, 14, whatever it was. Same thing, same age, same circumstance, caught the same way. Right? So I'm like, you know, and then I start realizing that this whole philosophy and everything has pretty much been in my head since I was a child. Some of the quotes from the books I had as thoughts as a child, you know? And so you would think when it gets that thick, and trust me, it got thicker. This is just, you know, the small sampling to give some context. There was plenty more. Extremely overwhelming, to put it mildly. I mean, I even went and rented a car, and every single thing about that car had some relationship. You know, the odometer was the sacred radius of the Freemasons. The license plate was THX, which is in gematria 666, and then the 666 in numbers on it. It was a Mercury Mountaineer. It was silver. So, you know, this person's planet was Mercury. He was a mountaineer. His order was the Silver Star. You know what I mean? Like, just everywhere I went, everything I did was it was just written. It was all over everything. So you would think that you would just accept it, right? And this is the advice that I'm trying to communicate here. If you really want to be good at navigating this kind of stuff, even when it gets that crazy, you still have to sit down, take a deep breath, and go through all the possibilities, you know. One of those possibilities am I English? Yes. So geneticists say that any ancestor, you can remember their memories. This is a scientifically accepted thing now. So there's that, you know, could have a common ancestor. My mom traced our lineage as a child and discovered that we were blue blood and could have easily been tied into that crowd. And then there's also the possibility of an Akashic record where, you know, we just have access to information. Just those two possibilities alone negate the potential for certainty, right? And that, there's no way I could stress to you guys how important it is to remember this process, you know, especially if you're tempted to believe something. Yeah, Athena, they usually have bigger audience reach, but tonight there's only like 1 or 2 people. And the other one's doing a little better. 49 Days of Bardo. And a lot of you guys know who I'm talking about. I just hate saying it out loud, so I'm not going to do that. I did remember, though, about a couple of other wild instances of collective synchronicity. In fact, to give some context for this on a personal level, so that car that I had talked about renting that had all these things connecting me to this past life, potentially, we actually got that vehicle, and it was the wrong vehicle. It was supposed to be a red Dodge Nitro, and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm sorry your car's not here, but there's this gray fucking Crowley mobile out there, you know." And it was so over the top that we went to a Tool concert in it. That's why I rented it. I had to carry more people than my car could hold, and so I rented this Mercury Mountaineer. And so we get in it, and of course my asshole roommate somehow has Cradle of Filth's cover of Mr. Crowley in his like little, you know, he had like 5 CDs, and of course he's got that and he puts it in. I didn't notice. I just turned the car on and that's what I hear. I'm like, Jesus, man, you know? So we're going to this Tool concert, and by the way, when we got the car there and parked it there, people were walking by, and because a lot of Tool people are into Crowley, they'd be like, dude, what the fuck, did you do this? Did you do this on purpose with the license plate and the silver, you know what I mean? No, I did not do that on purpose. So anyways, on the way there, after we got done listening to Cradle of Filth, we put in the Grateful Dead, because of course, what do you follow Cradle of Filth with? And one of the performances was So Many Roads from the last Grateful Dead concert. And So Many Roads, later song, whatever, they didn't play it much. But first of all, he acknowledges them controlling the weather and stuff, which was something that was totally taboo to talk about even for the entire 30 years prior to this. So that was odd. But then Garcia starts singing about basically dying and going to heaven or whatever, leaving this earth and moving on to a better place. And he's singing like a black man on acid, which was not his style. So it was really weird. And they also did 2 encores at the end of the show as if they knew that they weren't going to do another concert because Garcia died a week later. So anyways, we listened to this version of So Many Roads, really powerful. Everyone's crying in the car. And, you know, choked through with my choked voice, I say, and that's the last we saw of him. And at that moment, we were turning around a sharp turn, and there's this like blinding rainbow directly in front of us, which was the symbol that Deadheads associate with Garcia. And, you know, everyone in the car understood, you know, right away what that was. And so, you know, rainbow could be just a total coincidence, right? Right? Well, you guys can check this out. The surviving members did a reunion show on their 50th anniversary, and the first 2 nights were in the Bay Area. And it was also Gay Pride Day. So they go into this song called The Other One, and when Weir sings, the rainbows spiral round and round and tremble, then explode. Note that there are rainbows, plural, in the song. As he's singing this, two rainbows form behind the stage, so perfectly framing the stage. And everybody's looking around, and there's only a cloud above the stadium because it doesn't rain in June in the Bay Area. It just doesn't. Only right above the stage and just enough to allow these rainbows to form. And it was so over the top insane that Billboard magazine printed an article saying that they had used LEDs to somehow create rainbows in the sky, and they called the Dead's lighting company, who sarcastically was like, yeah, dude, we put 500,000 LEDs in the sky, you idiot. And so they printed that, and the lighting company called Billboard, and they're like, hey, are you stupid? We were joking. It was being sarcastic. You cannot do that. There's no way to do that. And so they published a redactment or a retractment or whatever that said maybe the Dead does jam with God. So yeah, I don't know if that's a synchronicity or some kind of like spiritual phenomena, or even something just generated by having so many people, especially with their filters open on psychedelics, with the same idea in the back of their mind. And the more people you have focused on this one single objective, I think the better of a chance. This is how rain dances worked. I've seen a rain dance work. I have seen wind blow on command with a Hawaiian shaman. And I have experienced from my own point of view, and also hearing stories like, the rainbow thing at the Dead show and many other similar ones. These stories of music seeming to have control of the weather, and it's funny because at that show where those double rainbows appeared, the drummer had just published his autobiography, and he said in the book, sometimes it might seem like we're controlling the weather, but it's just a coincidence. And so when those double rainbows formed, they didn't know, but when they went backstage for the set break, somebody told them, and he came out in tears, the drummer that had said it's just a coincidence. And he sat down on the stage and he's like, I know you guys all saw that and you know what it means. And he was crying, and I thought the fact that they sent Billy out because he had just published a book where he said it was just a coincidence. They sent him out to go and say, maybe that was not correct, I ended up on the cover of Wall Street Magazine that weekend as well, which was completely weird. Something I never would have expected. I was just walking around and happened to be the guy standing in front of the camera when they took the picture. Yeah. So, where the hell was I going with this? I know I had a plan. There was conceptual continuity. But for the moment, I have brain fog. So let me check the chat and see. If you guys have any questions or comments, also, it's always AI. Do you know bands from Baltimore, Polka Dot Cadaver Dog? No, I do not know those bands. Are you not that old? So what was your incarnation in between? Oh, thank you for asking me that, because that actually helped jog my memory to remind me of the next thing that I was going to talk about. And the answer is that I think I may have been my mother's, not boyfriend, but like soulmate or something. He died a few months before I was born. And listen to this shit. So this is one of the ways to use synchronicity. I'm really glad that I came onto this, because this is like really applicable, functionally usable stuff of substance, which is what we need from this sort of phenomena, really, right? So in, I think, 2011, of course, I got sort of fake married to this really wealthy girl. Her parents were rich. I didn't believe her, honestly, so it wasn't about that. I didn't do it for that reason. I thought she was full of shit, because I went to their house, and it was a small house, and they had a Subaru Outback and a little stupid other car, and there was no reason to think, there was a big hot tub, like, almost in the living room, because they didn't have anywhere to put it. I thought that was weird, sort of rich person-esque. But there was no real evidence until the day we got married. And I realized they had flown like 100 people from all over the country to the wedding. There were all these yuppies. And we were in the middle of nowhere in these like peaks of the mountains. And then it started to dawn on me that they had spent an insane amount of money. And so anyways, I married this girl, found myself in this really weird circumstance where, I wanted to grow pot to try to fund my music, and I was like, well, I need a house. And they're like, okay, well, let's go find one. And I'm like, what? They would just, whatever. Okay, 40-acre property, no problem, Mom, I need $10,000, and it would just be in the bank, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? Yeah. So anyways, it didn't turn out well, exactly. But not only did the relationship with this girl start under incredibly, I don't know if synchronistic is the right, like I pretty much mail ordered her from God. Like I was laying in bed one night and I had noticed that I had commanded my environment to provide me with all sorts of things. And that had happened, and I thought, well, I wonder if I could get, a blonde, this build, rich family willing to throw money at the music or whatever. And, I went through this big list. And we were engaged, and I didn't realize it though, until we were engaged and whatnot, that holy crap, this is exactly what I had asked the universe, like exactly. But when you do that, it almost always bites you in the ass. And I'm kind of going off the deep end a bit here, thinking about this stuff. But here's the point. Before I got involved with her, the guy before, she also was engaged to. And he huffed himself to death while drunk, playing PGA golf, right? You know how they say you always marry your mother? The guy that he had asked me who my previous incarnation may have been, my name is Harley James Michael, right? His name was Michael James. That's why I have 4 names, because my mom insisted on naming me after this guy. And so Michael James died on a golf course, huffing while drunk, at the same age that my fiance's. And it was also, she said, her soulmate, just like my mom said about this guy. So the lesson there is that if I had had greater wisdom, I would have known, because I knew it wasn't good if I was dating my mother. And I should have gone, I need to fix this and not be married to this girl and not get into a relationship afterwards. Because again, the next one was my mother, but like even more like insane, So that's the kind of thing that I'm suggesting here. When these insane synchronicities show up, at the time I was like, wow, that's, I think I found it a little bit disconcerting, but I didn't really have the presence of mind to interpret it exactly the way I needed to act on it correctly, which would have been to run like hell. But wait, there's more. And this is the really crazy part of it. Sorry, just trying to get that packed away where it's not too obnoxious. Okay, so during the Phoenix process, where I had this, voice that told me things that were always true, never got me into any trouble, and I failed miserably by not listening to it as much as I should, because I was trying to stay sane. It's like, I'm not going to just have some voice in my head telling me what to do, and I'm actually doing, you know what I mean? That sounds like schizophrenia. That's not good. I was wrong. It was whatever it was, higher self, God, some fucking demon that had my best. I don't know, but I do know I should have listened more. So my mom had told me that Michael James died on a motorcycle, and that's why my first name was Harley. My mom was a liar, basically. She lied to me about who my father was until I was 11. And then she started dating my real father, 11, of course. And she told me this is actually her dad. Both of them were named Jeff. There's some symmetry for you, right? So I had precedent, to believe this voice. It said, do me a favor, call your mom. I was just sitting on my back porch. It said, do me a favor, call your mom. And I was like, okay. Called my mom up. I'm like, hey, Mom. She's like, yeah. And the voice goes, ask her what really happened to Michael James. And I'm like, what? And it's all just do it. So I said, Mom, what really happened to Michael James? And she's like, what? And I knew, I could hear immediately. It's true. Whatever this thing is, it's true. She lied. Then it said, ask her what Steve Miller had to do with it. And I was like, Steve Miller, the classic rock? The silence. And I was like, okay, what did Steve Miller have to do with his death, Mom? And she's like, Harley, you're scaring me. You're like a TV psychic or something. And I was like, oh no, this isn't TV, Mom. And just silence for a long time. And she said he killed himself huffing gas and drinking on a golf course because he caught a guy named Steve Miller having sex with his girlfriend. And, I don't think she spoke to me again for like a month because it just freaked her out so badly. And so I don't know what happened there. I don't know if, it is true that I am my mother's son and we can remember things from our ancestors. And she's the most direct possible ancestor. So the possibility that that voice was nothing but my subconscious and that I just extracted that information because I wanted it. And I knew, because I had her memories in my DNA. Or a whole lot of other possibilities, Yeah, but that's funny. That's wild that somebody asked me in the chat at that exact moment, this is universal mind stuff. Somebody asked me at that exact moment that I was trying to remember what I was going to talk about next. And it was the doorway into that story. Which just reminded me of our next chapter in this debacle. Do me a favor. My best friend growing up at the trailer park in the 90s name is Harley, and my name is Jeff. Yeah, that's funny. Upon exiting the Chapel Perilous, one will either become paranoid or an agnostic. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I would assume that's a quote directly from Robert Anton Wilson. Yeah, man, my poor mom, though. Can you imagine? That must have been so freaky to have that happen to her, And I had been telling her for a while, there's like weird stuff going on, Mom. I don't think, I'm like not quite normal or something, and I'm pretty sure I'm not crazy. There's tons of witnesses to all this stuff, and, and she's just like, you're on drugs. You've lost your fucking mind, and so it was really, in a way, really satisfying for me to call and do that to her because it's like, what now? What now? What do you got to say now? And no, for those of you that aren't aware, we did not have a good relationship. If I seem a bit flippant about my mom. Okay, so there was something else that led me to though. That was fucking good and important. It was not Chapel Perilous. Damn. I did totally lose it again, you guys. I'm sorry. Let me see what's in the chat. Maybe something will remind me. I was going to say, if you have not already, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. There are chances for you to make, or gateways, portals to make contributions one time through the addresses in the chat and in the description of all the videos. We still have retreat events coming up, so you can email me if you're interested in those. And thank you for being here, even if you don't do any of those things. Although you'd be a lot cooler if you did. Right. I know I had at least one more chunk of this to share. And if not, no, it's only been 40 minutes. Man, I just have too much on my mind. It's a true story. Oh, recent things that happened. Last night, I gave kind of an overview of this recent set, I guess, of synchronicities that, when there's conceptual continuity, when they are separate in time and space, but they're consistently themed in a certain way, these are the ones to pay attention to and follow, because one improbable synchronicity or coincidence, the improbability factor is a high number. But if there's a second one of the same subject, the improbability factor becomes a bigger number. And so with each instance, there's an increase in improbability. And that expansion is also contraction that limits the possibility that it's not something meaningful, So you'll notice as you go along through these processes that if you are doing what you're supposed to in accordance with your real true will and not your presumed or assumed true will, because this is something people wreck a lot, Everybody wants to be something. And so a big mistake people make is to think that their true will is whatever it is they want to be, a rock star, a model, or you know what I mean? And that might be, but, So assuming that your true will is accurate and you start really aligning every action, every deed, every breath with the fulfillment of that obligation. It's a magical oath. It is. It's an obligation. I'm not saying that the universe necessarily is going to roll out a red carpet for you and you're just going to be handed money and everything you need. Sometimes for me it was like that, but I did a terrible job of accepting it all. So, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I am saying that it's not necessarily going to be like that, But you can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might get what you need. And that's the thing. Aligning with this true purpose, you will not do that unless you have started to build the bridge between the conscious and subconscious and have started to coagulate your true identity as a fully realized electromagnetic field with form and substance and definition and coherence, lots of coherence. Once you have done this, your magnetism will at the very least draw to you what you need. Terence McKenna talked about this. He said that, when you realize that this is what you must do, this whole pursuit of the fundamental purpose of the soul, basically, a lot of people hesitate because they're afraid that they would jump off of a cliff and they would be dashed on the rocks below, but then there's just a bunch of feathers that you land in. And anybody that knows my history over the last 6 years, it hasn't been all a bed of roses. But I did literally, misfortune in Northern California in the form of partners basically spending all my money while I was out of the country. and then just kind of flinging myself into South America with no plan. And then I hit the ground, rolled a couple times, and stood up. And that's kind of been how it's gone. But that whole analogy of landing in a feather bed, more or less fair, considering how ridiculous the leap was. And if I had stayed on my path, the leap would never have been necessary. But that's a tale for another time. I'll give you an example of what I mean, though, from recent history, right? So a lot of you guys know I'm having all these painful problems. 2 of them are painful, actually, and 2 of them are just potentially deadly. Not likely, but if I put it off too long, it could turn ugly, it sounds like. So, I don't want to, I can't get prescribed opiates in this country anyways. I don't really want to take opiates long term, which would be the normal route. So kratom is the best alternative. And due to the fact that we're about to move and I have 4 surgeries that I need to do more or less right away, money isn't exactly free flowing at the moment. And I realized I was getting low on kratom. And I thought, what am I going to do about this? Just like I just noticed, just 10 minutes before my friend, who I haven't heard from in like a year, sends me a message and offers to send kratom down here for free because she owns a kratom company. Literally within minutes of me realizing I was getting low on kratom, someone I never hear from sends me that message out of the fucking blue. And that is, it sounds, I hate to say it out loud because I don't want to jinx it, and I think also it could come off the wrong way. But it shouldn't, because I am offering this to you to hopefully give you more courage, in case you are having trouble believing in yourself, accepting the signs, symbols, hints, clues. The writing is indeed on the wall. The rest is up to you. Add the right spice at the right time to rise above all the dirt and grime. And as I've been saying for years since this chaostrophe really got into full swing, we all are facing existential threats, confusion. Things have kind of gone off the rails in just about every way that we can imagine. But the crypto market is like stronger it's ever been before. If you're on X, there are airdrops constantly. If you want to just spend hours, most of them are going to be scams. But I know people that have caught an airdrop that blew up and then they money for nothing really. Chill Guy, people put $100 in. That's now $450,000. A lot of them, I guess. X is the place to look. The point that I'm getting at is that if you're resourceful and intelligent and you're paying attention, there is more opportunity than there was before the pandemic. Now there is, but you cannot allow the dissonance and interference patterns to clog up your. You must be a hollow tube to bring down fire from heaven, young Padawan grasshopper. You know what I mean? If you have this interference pattern of fear and doubt and, fear and doubt, then, stay on the porch. But everything is in balance, and that means the more chaos there is, the more order there is. The more hate there is, the more love there is. The more hot there is, the more cold there is. The more broke there is, the more paid there is. It's all a matter of where you decide to put your focus, I suppose. A wise man once said, any decision made out of fear is wrong. Any decision made out of love is correct. Is it an oversimplification? I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. And, this secret indeed to everything is symmetry. The same symmetries that create order in the universe. There is no order in the universe. There is no life. There certainly is no beauty. There is no structure. There is no possibility of repetition of predictable patterns that we can turn to our ends and that allow us to make plans and execute them and whatnot. Symmetry is at the core of all life and experience. Symmetry is beauty as well. Symmetry is what lets algorithms make accurate predictions. Algorithms can be deployed to describe the behavior of practically any system that has behavior. What I just said, those last couple of sentences there, really are the key to all of this. Fibonacci in history, Fibonacci in a seashell, Fibonacci in my hand, Fibonacci in the trees, the galaxies. Symmetry. Okay, let me check in with the chat, but I think I got to keep it a little bit short tonight because I still have some practicing to do. I'm going to try to do the music stream on Saturday. My interface is either working or not working, and I don't know what to do about it. But I'm going to try again on Saturday. But we're going morel hunting tomorrow because it has been raining a lot. So I won't have a lot of time to prepare tomorrow, so I have to do it tonight. Which means I can't sit here and talk all night because I have my true will to fulfill. God damn, we lost everybody? What? 11 views, 11 viewers, 11 likes. Yeah, well, thoth is just the intellect. I don't really know that I think thoth is... What kind of trips did you have on Sacred Datura? Who is asking? Are you asking me that? Money is not the root of all evil. It absolutely isn't. It is the self-preservation instinct that really is and the fact that, the overlords in our society have promulgated this distorted perception of what self-preservation even looks like. Because helping your fellow man, being a steward of the environment, all of these things are actually self-preservation. Empathy is self-preservation. Charity is self-preservation. Kindness is self-preservation. So I think that it's not really true that money is the root of all evil. Money is a tool. A chainsaw is a tool, I mean, drugs are tools. It just depends. If you use all of these things destructively, they fuck things up. And if you use them with wisdom, they're great. Nuclear power can power cities, or it can kindle the stars, the same energy that lights the stars on our enemies. So... Yeah, well, he's asking about the individual electromagnetic field causing synchronicity and whatnot. I mean, I don't know that... is it the impulse traveling through the electromagnetic field or the field itself? Or, I don't know exactly how these things work, and no one does, I don't think. But I think we're getting closer to having real answers. If you follow... Stuart Hameroff and Penrose have worked together to develop an ORC theory of consciousness. And there's a lot of developments being made that connect consciousness to entanglement, which is a really wild thing because it suggests that the same mechanism that is responsible for the interconnectedness of all things literally generates awareness. And that is one of those instances of... science retroactively confirming something that mystics have been saying forever. That's a big one. you know? And the idea that there's an omnipresent mind, the fact that Michael Levin has proven that you can manipulate electromagnetic fields in a way that changes the morphology of organisms and their progeny without changing the DNA, meaning the field is more important than the genetics, and also that memories are stored in the field rather than in cells. You know, and then we have other studies that are showing that cells have memory despite the fact that they don't have neurons, which means they're using these fields too. And what else is there? You know, we have single-cell slime molds that are out engineering subway systems, or out, you know, doing a better job than humans with computers. So all of that I'm saying is getting us closer to the point where we might actually be able to answer the question one day, like, to what extent exactly is the human mind capable of manifestation? I think I kind of know the answer to that, and it's not what most manifestation coaches would tell you, because they're trying to make a marketable product, and so they're trying to convince you that all you have to do is be clear and think about something and your bank account will fill up or whatever, and that's nonsense. There's no magician that is that powerful. You know, you have to set up real world circumstances and conduits for the energy to flow and do stuff. And it's not that magic isn't real, but anyways, not trying to go off on that tangent at the moment. But what I am saying, recent developments in the world of science suggest that we may actually understand the limitations and the potentials of things like manifestation and synchronicity, and how they physically work. Dr. Joe Dispenza. He is a great example of what I was just... It's so funny we have 11 concurrent viewers and 11 likes. I mean, I would prefer to have more of us, but that's the number. You guys see that. 1111 on the thumbnail, 1111 on the screen. Joe Dispenza. He's a great example of what I was just talking about. You know, some of the stuff that he says, I think, is legit, but he is exaggerating and kind of sugarcoating and making a more marketable concept. If everything he said was true, there would be New Agers like floating around everywhere. They would all have, you know, quartz crystal Lamborghinis or whatever, and, you know, and pet unicorns and shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can tell that they're not realistic, a lot of the things that people like him describe. It's not entirely wrong, but it has been engineered to be marketable. So, personally, I think that's kind of fucked up, because what you're doing to people is kind of shifting their... You're selling them, helping them to become more effective. But what you're really doing is subverting their efficacy, you know, by misplacing and misdirecting their energy to an extent. So it's not the way to go. But I will also say he's not as bad as a lot of them. You know, he's much more down to earth and reasonable about it. Still, at the same time, in order to make a marketable product, there are two things these New Age people like that do. The one is that they oversell their confidence. They act like they're sure about things that they can only be speculative about. That is one of the, you know, the reasons why I can't be that marketable, because I refuse to do that. You know, I'm not going to act like it's possible to know things I can't know, so that I can increase my marketability with the creating the perception of, you know, confidence that you can't have, you know, in reality, or at least I don't think you can. You know, that's a huge part of it. And then also kind of exaggerating how easy and effective this stuff is, when in reality, you know, if it's true so that you can influence your environment with that level of consciousness, you know, I think I'm relatively advanced and I still spit and stutter, you know. So I think, you know, for someone to be completely green and not have devoted their entire life to this and think they're just going to like read some books about manifestation and do this kind of stuff, That's just not fair. That's not how the world works. If you're going to get like really good at this sort of thing, it's like being a professional athlete or something. You know what I mean? It's going to be all consuming. And you're going to have to study mathematics, geometry, philosophy, take psychedelics, constant contemplation, mindful, you know what I mean? All this shit for decades. Or I'm just terrible at it and really dumb because I have done all those things for decades and it still happens in fits and starts for me, So that's a possibility, I suppose. But you know what I mean? It's just they're overselling. It's not totally illegit, but definitely not totally legit either. Nikola Tesla believes that numbers 3, 6, and 9 held a special significance in the universe. He's often quoted as saying, if you only knew the magnificence of the 3, the 6, and the 9. Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what he meant by that, but there definitely are qualities and characteristics and functions of numbers that are legitimate, And the series I'm doing on Hermeticism, I'm not going to go too deeply into this because I'm going to go really deeply into it. I don't want to be too redundant. But for example, the number 3, thrice greatest Hermes, third eye, the Trinity, 3 notes make a chord in Western music theory. There are 3 original elements according to most indigenous cultures. Earth is derivative of the other 3. There are 3 fundamental forces of physics now because gravity was the 4th, but now it's a derivative of the other 3. 6 is a solar number, and there are a tremendous number of reasons for that. The number 9 is associated with the moon, and the diameter and the distance from Earth and a whole bunch of other features of the moon all add up to 9. The number of magical expansion, 11, the sun has these cycles of 11 years where it reaches this peak intensity and then drops down again. So, I mean, I'm not really exactly sure about 3, 6, and 9, but, I'm sure he was onto something. He was a smart dude. The thing is, though, you can't make the mistake of thinking that because people are smart that they actually know what they're talking about. I have met absolutely brilliant people that did know some things, but they were complete lunatic idiots in other subjects. I'm kind of like that. Another great example is that Langan guy. I think his name is Mark Langan. He's like 220 IQ. He's a moron. He's an absolute moron. He was on the theory of everything. And at first I was watching it and I was thinking, this is interesting because he's kind of taking that same point of view that the hermetic sciences do, that, that spirituality and science can kind of blesh and that's good. But then he just started going off the deep end and ego everywhere. And I realized this guy has an amazing memory, but he has no critical thinking ability at all whatsoever. None. And no self-awareness. So, and the only reason I'm not just trying to troll this guy, I'm just saying that, we have to be aware that just because Tesla figured out a bunch of really smart things, 3, 6, and 9 may be just numbers. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to attribute things to people, as truth just because they're intelligent in some ways. They may be completely fucking stupid in other ways. Also, that guy, Terrence Howard, that was crazy because nothing that he said even sounded smart, and there's probably people watching the stream that are going to get butthurt about that. And I don't really care because it's true. It was mind-numbingly dumb. And I've noticed he has vanished from the social media spectrum almost completely. I hope people figured out, so we got to be careful. What happened there is that our trust in the system and in everything, even the fundamental assumptions that like 1 times 1 is 1, people became so paranoid that this guy who was obviously lying about stuff, like when he brought those patents up on Rogan, those were actually, there's a process, I think it's called exclusionary differentiation clause or something. What they're supposed to do is they give a list of patents that exist that are not the patent that they are patenting, but they are similar. And so they're saying not this patent, not this patent, not this patent, not this patent. That's what that list was. And he knew it. He was literally lying to everyone watching Rogan. He knew those were dead patents that were not being used by those companies. So it was crazy to watch this dude, and then having people, you know, I point this stuff out and people are attacking me. I'm like, go look them up yourself. Pause on Rogan and go to the patent office website before you attack somebody and just look for yourself, fucker, you know. 1 times 1 is not 2. Nothing he said about DNA and the spirals and all that, none of that wasn't even from a scientist. It was from an artist from like the 1960s or something, you know? So, yeah, and I noticed as I started talking about what a lying idiot that guy was, we lost 5 or 6 viewers because they probably are of the opinion that Terrence Howard was revolutionizing everything and he was persecuted for his genius. And no, man, he was like a flat earther, you know? And I hate that. I really hate it, because it is true that a lot of the things that we have been taught are correct, are not. You know, and the fundamental thing that a sort of intelligence that is integrated into the fabric of reality and the knowledge that comes along with that type of experience of the universe is fundamentally important to the psychological, emotional, and spiritual health of mankind. So when people like Billy Carson and Terrence Howard come along, making us all look like drooling idiots, you know, it's not going to help us with acclamation, you know. It really, you know, people like Terrence Howard do this movement more of a disservice than the CIA, really. He probably works for them, honestly. But yeah, if I seem to get a little bit triggered when I talk about these people, that's why, you know, because it just does a tremendous amount of damage when they get a large platform and start running their dumbass mouths. It's not good. We don't like it. So, on a happier note, though, symmetry. It's beauty. It's order. It's evidence. It is a dialogue with the universal mind and the subconscious mind. And it is through that process that we individuate, self-realize, self-define. You know, we have been undergoing a sort of chrysalis metamorphosis, right? And when a caterpillar is in a chrysalis, it's basically in a coma. In fact, it's not even just that it doesn't know what it is. It literally liquefies and then reformulates into a fucking butterfly. And by the way, the only way that could happen is if it was a field, morphological field, that is directing the process, I think. I mean, how do you just turn to liquid and then reform into a completely different organism? I mean, do you know how complex it is to organize peptides and aminos and all of these things into butterfly fucking wings of a certain species? And, you know, I mean, wild shit. Point is, while it's in that cocoon stage, it doesn't even know what the fuck it is. And really, it's not even anything. It's not anything, you know, definable. It's just a glop. That's people until they wake up. And you'll notice that when a butterfly emerges from a chrysalis, its wings are all fucked up and wet and, you know, they're all wrinkled and it's like, you know, they're still not really a butterfly. They can't do anything. And they're probably in shock, just kind of sitting there like, wait, I think I'm not a caterpillar anymore. And then it notices like, ugh, what the hell are those? Oh, wait. And then it starts moving and rustling them and fanning them in the wind. And all this process takes about 2 or 3 hours for a butterfly, maybe 4. But the lifespan of a butterfly is only a few weeks. And so if you scale that up to a human, this process of coming out of the cocoon, shaking off your wings, find your shoes, try on your hat, or what is that song? See that girl barefooting along. So find your shoes, put on your hat, try out your wings, and find out where it's at. Yeah. It's like an old 65 Grateful Dead song. There's another line that fits this so well. Showing you the way like a highway sign, leaving no doubt of the way on in or the way back out. Probably not perfect, but you guys know what I'm getting at here. You know, the scale, it's years. But the process for anyone watching this probably has already begun. And once it has been catalyzed, it is rare. It's not impossible, but it is rare that it can be stopped by anything other than death. And death probably is an advantage, is a boon to this process. For me at this point, I'm 45, almost 46 years old. If I die, I imagine it'll just give me a, younger meat suit to, get my aptitude, back, to a nice youthful, you know what I mean? Like, I doubt death is even an issue. So, find your shoes, put on your hat, try on your wings, and find out where it's at. Everybody's dancing in a ring around the sun. Nobody started, we ain't even begun. So anyways, thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Speaking of music, I'm going to shut up and play a lot of it for many hours. And hopefully see you guys on Saturday, assuming that my interface is cooperating. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. You get access to years worth of premium material and FaceTime with me if you like to have a conversation and have consultations, and guitar lessons and all sorts of wonderful things. Anything that I can be of service, I will happily provide for you. So good night.